Hello, Connecticut. For example, I don't know if it was theater or what they were talking about. I just heard they were speaking about human trafficking. Fox News, I believe it was Fox Connecticut News. But see, and they talk about reports and they investigate the legitimacy of what people say criminally. They've been attaching people to fake locations, fake words, because they invested people that are involved with on-off Fox Connecticut News, on-off the buildings next to them. And this is nothing personal against them. They're also pretending, even where it's, you say, oh, that's not personal, that's you. Well, how would you say it's not personal? Because these are also their roles with courts, judges and prosecutors, state's attorneys, and roles with Washington, D.C. and World Trade Center, with intercampuses of each age and nature connected. Evidences. That and how that they have people reporting lies about the validity of things. And they're leaving out their roles with the people who advertise. And with the narratives pretending things are either motivations for evil have to do with money. Even where that is correct, they're exploiting exceptions in exception nature. For example, with Mendez police involved with intercities, predicate acts with Fox Connecticut News, and with courts. Courts and prosecutors nationally and interstates that recorded, confessed, and demonstrated consciously, criminally, sickly, and with delusions, pretend they don't want people to control the nature of, the nature of, and the questions. Now see where they use, they're also self-value, using all exceptions in exception nature and demonstration of this. Per their roles also with identity thefts and frauds methods, again related to the buildings next to Fox Connecticut News, and then also how they recorded, forced people to have conversations that need to use other people's names. And this is including countries, including our own. That's why there are problems. They're forcing people, they're forcing the human syntax nature to value that always having been too, because then they force the styles, needing to blame the perfect world forsaken, correlation nature, science forsaken on other things other than themselves, when it's demonstrated to correlation nature. They need to value each age and nature of correlation nature, hurt by what is originally and still off campuses forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded, and maintained further and further on off campuses live progressions from those spots until there are manifest all investigations, investigators, and vetting identities needing to hide uses of identity of the ground, uses of their logic, criminally foreign influence delusions raw, sequence shifting natures, identity theft, frauds, fabricating audio and video with a whole bunch of other nations, pretending passions and emotions. So we have identity of the ground locations that are being used and having been used by private criminally legalized criminal enterprises originally still, and by unrealized ones with that, and overt criminal enterprises, and natures of them unrealized too, because of how they bound all for those propagated fact-sheeting nature styles, identity theft styles. WFSB also has locations next to them, recorded, confessed, and demonstrated, involved with prosecutors and judges, with houses on my street and tied to them through time, and with roles with wire crimes and mail crimes, falsified police reports, human trafficking where they attach me and little kids to fake locations through time, fake conversations with others, tied to the people who pretend passions, pretend hate and stuff like that aren't even in the classroom, so no one has a means to counter. They're pretending fake interactions between kids, and especially with these medical, foreign and domestic, in collusion. This is also their roles were actually recorded with on-off campuses and their uses of corners. They've been using investigations, vetting identity, and investigators, all of them. as victim predators. So we have to have mandated law followed. For example, they use the crime methods, also distinct, non-distinct, and simultaneously. So the fact-sheeping nature can't leave out the officers when you're communicating with someone, actually, because they're pretending conversations. And they have criminally foreign influence readings of the law, while they've been fabricating audio and video through time-connected ways. My town's police chief, his daughter, is also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated. This is Weathersfield, Connecticut. Is also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated, involved with a whole bunch of people with various departments at Central Connecticut State University that have roles as the evidences, what is actually recorded through time, with sequence shifts, with on and off campuses, what is actually recorded so we could discern the predicate acts delivery system method is the subject of American history, with the rest of the subject /s of American history. But for example, that critical, which is left out and replaced by that with criminal foreign influence premises treatments and physical delusions to the justification of itself. I wanted to note also how people with the most knowledge of names and evidences about how that predicate acts delivery system method was left entrenched for us to demonstrate how they are self-valuing roles with uses of it to prevent anyone from using the quality of fact-shaping nature that we are actually capable of being and are, to demonstrate what is actually recorded about American history, about how our founding parents didn't have free speech while they were trying to, in other words, there was a method to it, and that method involved all identity of the ground locations, sickly distinctly. For example, how there was slavery in the North sickly distinctly from the South. For example, how there is evidence how that is never simultaneously attached to the same repeated narratives about our history, about our identity /s. We are individual, group, and species identity of volume /s. There are three distinct, non-distinct, and simultaneously bonded identities of volume as value as nature /nature as value. And not only are they bonded, but by what is only increasing as an identity of volume, and them too. Unlike all other identities of volume, one identity of volume that is inseparable from all others, its identity of relationship to itself, is also inseparable from all others. And the value of that only increasing is inseparable from that. Genesis was revealed by the ancients as a particular scientific type of generation, of its self-generation. So we are only temporary positive because of how we are its identity of volume /s juxtaposed, and how we are simultaneously the simultaneous value of all individual, grouped, and together. Like your complete identity is a whole bunch of individual, grouped, and complete identity. Identities. Your arm has a whole bunch of cells, parts that connect everything, individually grouped and together. And that is semi-nature, that is complete. You have your complete identity, independent. See, we'll get to that, but the exceptions and exception nature are the subject here. Black Lives Matter is the perfect example to teach about the how and why. The ancients would most probably teach about Alpha and Omega and about Yin Yang simultaneously, and simultaneously distinctly from how they do now, how they remember it. Per all victim roles as an array of billions of opinions, all defenses of themselves, offensively against science, self-valuing that and how that was that has always been pretended other to all locations further and further from all database relationships, but from what was all locations first, that predicate acts delivery system method entrenched. That only didn't just force roles with things like extortion, identity thefts, and frauds. See, where they put color with the law, that is more positive because it shows us the identity that volume that we are, it will demonstrate negative value nature, progressions, acts, natures, and demonstration of that. It will demonstrate criminally foreign influence and delusions wrought possession /S of the sciences of the ancient campus Marcius that was revealed since before criminal re-engineering of it in semi-ancient times. Tactical criminal re-engineering of it that self-valued since can't defend its logic, its premises treatments, its identity treatments, its sequence treatments, its simultaneous treatments, and us at the same time, from what exploits that. Every modern nation is in a semi-ancient trap that none were the source of. It is maintenance to how it is fluent through each nation for how it kept self-value, all locations, areas, and states. Science is abridged. Constitution abridged, and that's self-value. As criminal insidiousness natures that could then and were and are used perpetually remotely, not just the overt ways where labor is underpaid and stuff like that, and the alternatives. So America didn't have wealth. America had identities of slaves with no free speech, including our founding parents did not have free speech. And that made sure that was trying to figure out who they were and what really brought that unity. Because all the laws in the breaching method were entrenched to get who, of course everyone wanted out of that. But they had the form of unity to do that. And so that was made only possible of being natures of unity as criminal insidious nature, self-value. Increasingly incapable of defending itself and its logic and its positive treatments and its negative treatments. So a criminal insidious nature is going to value positive treatments that are as temporary positive that is really negative. Premises treatments, sequence identity treatments, logic treatments, fact treatment nature, criminal insidious nature. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a police form, I'm not a criminal. It is recorded how the lawyers are also with the branches individually grouped in together, crime methods and private. Because they make allegations about what people say. So for example, with the little rap, with the movie too. Little Rap Guy and friends are going to try to set up the Burroughs book and the pamphleteers. So we're gonna claim what is actually recorded, which is tactical captivation, slavery of the human value nature systems. No person was as the fault of this. No group, but there was a predicate acts delivery system method there. So there are proofs that there are exceptions to that, an exception in nature, that which took over, originally revealed before criminal enterprises, the nature of internation relations, per a method that knew how this is syntax oriented, therefore semantics oriented, rhetoric oriented, but they weren't worried about the rhetoric, but they were propagating the rhetoric. They were propagating semantic criminal insidious natures of semantics natures, syntax natures. Syntax, all Even the ancient languages, there are proofs that English is an ancient language that they can't teach properly now. For example, for all that is actually capable of being answered through English per how the sciences share an identity that is volume as value as nature / nature as value. So it is invisible but still discernible. Also because simultaneously its identity of relationship to itself and the value of that are only increasing distinctly and non-distinctly to its 1/3/5 identities of volume /s. So 1/3/5. Note that as 3 values simultaneously as 1 value, because they're bonded by the slash. And know that them simultaneously as 5 semi-natures. For example, this is how the cell nucleus, the cell body, and the cell wall are recorded in conjunction with 2 identities of sequence / simultaneous nature further. For example, as all that is actually discernible with where and how water and oxygen are also physical possessions of the physical possessions of the cell nucleus, cell body, cell wall by the cell itself, identity. It has 3 semi-natures of volume. As we are individual grouped and together 3 identities of semi-nature. And this is where and how one identity of value / value progression will only stay complete nature, that is only positive to itself. How other could be is only exceptions and is exception nature and demonstration of it. For example, the ancients would more probably have defined Leth of Hades as forced space nature transfer. And nature is again this identity of volume that they had to agree that they were revealed to natural agreement to call it what is at least the identity of the body of forever, and a little bit more and a little bit less than that. And they had to agree on the name of that individually grouped and together to use its identity of relationship to itself, and the value of that, which the archetypal organized crime method, an archetypal criminal enterprise, set the world up incapable of defending their takes on identities individual grouped and together, and of countering what exploits that increasingly. This was sophistication here since before our founding parents were born, and it was sophistication in the nature of the nations that were involved with things like the slavery North and South, sickly distinctly in America. It was already sickly distinctly, everyone over there was already forced victim reactions and roles, and invested in natures, invested fact cheaping nature styles, not realizing, not fathoming how all locations, areas, and states could more easily than our government keep a track of us, keep better track of us, and exploit that, keeping self-valued how every individual, group, and together has offensively then prevented free speech, while everyone pretends other if they're going to use, and where and how they would have the means to use. Logic not with no criminal foreign influences. Logic with no sequence shifts. Finite, active, progressive lies, identity thefts, and frauds self-valued by styles. You self-value your style. I'm not talking about the theater, who's good or bad. I'm talking about actually what is true. I'm using what is true always as exceptions in exception nature, as what is not denying that, as what does not value that having been denied. See, if we had science of this integrity, I'm describing to you, revealed, we would have had evolution's fruits and gifts. Instead, we had negative value nature progressions, action natures that were tactically induced before they were and while they were being self-valued, roles with it, blaming other things other than selves for all the demonstrations that nature gives, the correlation nature, finite, active, progressive, sequentially. See, this is like a little intercities maze to the identities of the law, like a little game where their value nature system self-value. They can't defend their opinions and convictions and the premises associated with it, and their uses of other people's identities, and their uses of crime methods where they stack identities. There was an officer named Kevin Dillon. Never had a verbal conversation in my life, but yeah, other people make confessions to it. Then he waves, which is relevant per his roles with some people on the Child Defender Registry, and his family with others, with the private and formal interbranch with the policing of the schools, and their uses of the databases involved with sequence shifts, predicate acts against each age of fact-keeping nature. These are also in Anna Dillon. She also uses the name Annie Dillon. She's involved with judges and prosecutors and state's attorneys and people with Washington, D.C. and the World Trade Center that are also involved with what is manifest on and off campuses, manifest as crime methods. So WFSB attached me as a little kid. They lied. They attached me to fake words. They attached my family to fake words. And sequence shifts. They approached my family in the furtherance of sequence shifts, and as they're recorded, confessed, and demonstrated roles with predicate acts with people involved with the depositions of co-defendants tied to, and as former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, leading up to the World Trade Center and since, they were involved with other natures of predicate acts, with investigations and vetting identities in other nations and military, keeping them stacking fabricated audio and video. Then they're making overall allegations, lies against people, as the people that are supposed to be following the law. And so they're offensively haven't been following the law, and the people with the prisons tied to them are recorded on off the state judicial branch offices, on off the state prison offices, roles with natures of identity thefts, frauds, and uses of that by another method nature of it that America is really about. Now these are the people with intercity locations, uses of all identities, titles, jobs, people, identity ground, roles with that uses of identity ground locations. This is not just from off the campuses maintained. It is all locations, and then further and further, increasingly. In other words, they have methods where they make little kids use other kids' names because of the amount of natures of jobs that were already had their identity ground locations used with identity thefts and frauds, where there is also evidences, racketeering, way worse than war crimes, self-value originally instilled. That's what slavery is about. Slavery is about a whole bunch of simple and complex things that are true always, not denying any exceptions. Now, rather than have this science and quality of fact, cheaping nature address what slavery is, they put people with criminally foreign influence premises treatments, fact cheaping nature, quality of value, determination, treatment natures, delusions wrought, criminally foreign influence, and pretending other, and that being and having been used remotely. So we have to have mandated law followed. Fox Connecticut News is recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with intercities crimes with judges and prosecutors of various natures of courts and all the natures of courts, and on and off the state judicial branch offices. A Fianza family and others recorded on and off Two-Rod Highway are recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with sequence shifts, identity thefts, frauds that involve whole groups, because also how they use names, then they make people have to use other names. How investigators, and vetting identities. Also recorded abuses of their kids because they need to pretend illusions, because they already used our roles with and the uses of people's names interbranch on and off campuses and with locations that are connected. So they need to hide those connections, so they've been doing it by fabricating audio and video. So the Fox Connecticut News investigators and the people who report for them, they're playing like a zone defense and offense against our people with worse than just extortion. Pretending, lying about the credibility of what people say. The police forms and the courts are recorded, confessed, demonstrated. They use that crime method in backgrounds, pretending that people are trying to control. They don't want to have people control questions. Because what is really recorded is how investigators, and vetting identities have been maintained, used remotely, have been maintained through since before our founding parents were born, by a method that is intercampuses of each age and nature. It is simultaneously private database relationships, and it is simple to discern. It is only extensive. So we have to have simple truths be allowed. In other words, Fox Connecticut News and WFSB WFSB is in Rocky Hill locations, and Fox Connecticut News they're also involved with predicate acts on off Broad Street, and on off Trinity College, on off Central Connecticut State University. Also with journalism, other journalism, the schooling of journalists. They're recorded, and each of the sciences are kept victim predators. And they want them to make opinions and have debates. Because now we have the roles of the crime methods already standing of the branch of the government distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. They already have been hiding it distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. So not only do we have to counter the natures of in the premises treatments and uses of valued by, and the sequence treatments valued by the people interbranch of Connecticut and interstates, and how it is intercities through time. There are people associated with Sound View, recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with people on and off Trinity College. All the colleges, but on and off Two-Rod Highway, that are involved with the predicate acts of the judges, people that work with the judicial branch offices, all the police forms interbranch, all the identities of the law, private too. They are recorded syntax, organized crime method worse than war crimes, identity thefts, frauds, roles, and no needing to pretend other where those are fact, cheap, nature oriented, predicate acts roles, wrongdoing roles, nature of criminal serious nature. Use, in other words, this is once, if people do wrong to others, they hurt them, like whole areas, overtly, worse than forsaken. And they just say that simple. They pretend people make allegations. They fabricate audio and video to describe the conversations where they're pretending people are making allegations. So they're preventing people a response to serious crimes. And they're stacking more and more names as roles with it. So they make people not like other people pretended because we have to use their names. They have a legitimate reason to pretend passions and emotions to act and to not act because they don't want people using their name. They brought these names up. See, we have interbranch men and women leaders originally instilled that can't defend themselves and afford integrity of logic to have free speech, and they need to pretend other offensively. So FSB and Fox Connecticut News, I'm going to ask again, because you guys are involved also with delays while stacking names and predicate acts roles, like extortion, like mail crime, wire crime cover-ups, with more predicate acts, wrongdoing, sequence shifts, identity thefts, frauds, roles, no. So, this has been since before the World Trade Center attack. There's a pattern of many names.